Brazil is a country of emotions, contrasts, and extremes. Here, a simple passerby can hug you and offer you their last meal, or they can take all your possessions, also with a smile. And while millionaires fly over dangerous areas in helicopters, millions of Brazilians live in these areas, raise children, and make plans for the future. This episode will be about such areas with the slum favelas. Moreover, I will go to film them in two of the most important Brazilian cities, Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. Here you have a favela. I think that dying in such a beautiful place. The part about dying is of course a joke, but only partially, because it can be very dangerous in the slums, even for the locals.
A police officer father raped his daughter from the age of 8. She shot him in the leg.
One of the pregnant women gave birth right into the river apparently, and thus disposed of her child.
The rivers are sewage streams in the city center.
In the favelas, laws do not apply and there is no police presence, while the mafia makes huge profits from the trade of illegal substances.
During certain periods, this is the main route for drugs, particularly as it is worldwide.
Most of the vessel is submerged underwater, and accordingly divers bring in the drugs. Accordingly, there are various grates there. They open these grates and attach the drugs there.
And the same judges, the same prosecutors, they also smoke, they also consume.
The country is undoubtedly rife with corruption and lawlessness, and many foreigners find themselves in big trouble.
They first unjustly imprison you, and then figure out why you were imprisoned. It turns out that, unfortunately, they found 8 kilograms of packed coke in my suitcase. The one I lost, I will never return.
Today I will walk through the slums, witness a police raid, and experience the local atmosphere myself.
They blocked the road, and they are already expecting someone. They could be killed here because they are the police. On the street they approached with a knife, they slashed. That happened too. I talked to a Chinese guy, he said that he personally killed more than 1,000 people.
In the video, we will also talk about what slavery was like in Brazil in the past and how it manifests now, as well as the difficult life of a foreigner in a local prison.
In the prison environment, about 80% were African American individuals. With some inmates, you had to treat them like children, meaning you had to make them wash. But at first you could really die. You could. Well, my first decision was to run away. And I ran, and successfully.
There will definitely be a lot of events today, so while you're subscribing to my YouTube and Instagram, where I, Vova Karmanov, am starting, this is Rio, the city of carnivals, football and the Olympics. But that's how we know it from across the ocean. Ordinary Brazilians, of course, love football and carnivals, but day by day they have to solve other problems, because most locals live in favelas, poor and dangerous areas. To one of these, past Copacabana Beach, I'm heading right now, with Alia. Alia often visits the favelas, and recently she was beaten by homeless people. Here she is on the phone showing the aftermath of that fight.
I was returning home, it was very cold, August, and I saw a homeless man who was settling down to sleep. He was in shorts and flip-flops. I just felt sorry for him. I approached and asked if he had any clothes or something to cover himself with. He said no, he had nothing. I promised him I would look for something at home. So I brought him hot tea, sweet, clothes, whatever I found. And then his girlfriend shows up. She attacked me with fists and kicks, tore the rag from my hair. At that point I realized that, well, maybe I should go to the police. Because if everyone stays silent, nothing will change. Well, has anything moved forward since then? No, of course, nothing has moved forward. I just decided to contribute to the statistics, because the more reports and appeals to the police, the more statistics there will be. You can't hide it either. They will eventually have to take some measures in the area, not just personally, based on the results. I was shocked, and he just looked at me like that, completely... Damn. You understand that this will lead to nothing. It's useless. I said, well, in principle, I didn't doubt that it would be useless, but I would like to somehow formalize all this officially. I went through this expertise. He will keep an eye on it. I returned home, then I see everything is swelling up, getting scarier and scarier. Then this fracture started to protrude, all of it on one side. Well, in the end, that's how it all ended, and I decided, no more, I'm not helping anyone.
Alia herself doesn't live in a favela, but in a lively neighborhood. Here are some fresh shots from her window where you can hear gunfire. And just the other day, indeed, on the street next to hers, the police hit a pregnant woman. The Vidigal favela, which we approached, is located by the ocean, not too far from the center of Rio. It's not the most dangerous, but still, you can't just drive up to its territory in a regular taxi. And here at the entrance and the police post is the last place where I can relatively calmly shoot video.
You never know who you might catch in the video. Here, it's mostly people who are on the run.
Well, we've started filming here. Someone's already watching us. What do you think?
I don't think so. Turn around.
I'm scared.
They're behind your wall.
We can only get up to the favela with local guys on motorcycles. I was surprised at how crowded it is here. On the main street of the favela, small shops are open and residents are going about their business. Everything is covered in writing, graffiti, and in some places, piles of garbage. The higher you go, the scarier it gets, and filming secretly becomes more dangerous. At the top, everyone is building and adding on something. I was amazed when a small Brazilian passed by with a whole sack of bricks on his back. We arrived at the cafe Alia visits often. Open Up. The cafe is indeed actually a regular house with an open roof, where you can have a drink and enjoy an extremely unusual and powerful view of Rio. That's the favela for you. I think that dying in such a beautiful place. By the way, above the favela, it's not plastic bags flying, but kites. Once bandits used them to send signals, but they were deciphered, and now kites are flown by ordinary children again. The favela is indeed built right on the slope of a huge rock which has special water channels.
We have tropical downpours. They are very heavy with water. And to prevent houses from being washed away, these barriers help direct the flow.
It's not just for nothing, because favelas are often flooded and washed away by water flow.
This happens to us almost every year. Either a favela gets washed away, or it could be a whole landslide that washes away towns. But again, it's not very wise to build on mountains like this, right?
From above, you can see every house in the favela has blue barrels. This is a water reserve.
What system? If, for example, water is first pumped into reservoirs, and this applies to absolutely all buildings, including high-rise and commercial buildings, those that are about 30 stories high. At the top, everyone has water reservoirs under the roof, and the water flows from top to bottom.
It's relatively safe to just walk around the favela, but not to film. On almost every street here, there is constant drug dealing. I still want to live, so I didn't film those stalls, but they look like this table. More often, I saw the guys with Kalashnikov rifles, rather than pistols. At each table, there are 4 or 5 guys, all armed. On the table there are small bags with price tags. What costs 100 in Europe is offered here for just $2. Even in the center of Rio they sell illegal substances, but not as openly.
Here, yes, all of this is sold. It's not like they come to you and offer it. All of this is already, you have to look for it yourself. You have to look for it yourself, but it's very easy to do here.
This is Sasha. He works as a sailor and constantly hears stories about smuggling from his colleagues.
Are there often inspections, raids or something like that here? Well, mostly it happens, let's say, by, as far as I've heard, container ships come here, which comes to Brazil. Accordingly, the crew has the duty, let's say, to check all these containers, although physically it's not possible because, well, imagine there are 2,000 containers to be checked.
Cargo is often attached to ships without the crew's knowledge, but if caught, the blame falls on the sailors.
A large part of the ship is submerged underwater, and accordingly divers bring in drugs. Accordingly, there are various grates where different so-called openings are located, where water for intake cooling flows in, And accordingly, they open these grates and attach drugs there. When the ship arrives at a new port, they are met and retrieved in the same way.
But this is the main port. Rio de Janeiro is the main road for drugs, particularly around the world.
But as far as I know from series, they still make more in Colombia.
Not anymore. In Colombia, by the way, they've been cracked down on a bit. It's calmer there now.
And how does this affect life in an ordinary favela? So, for example, does something pass through here too? Some flows but knee, right? Or is it all in the ports, not here?
No. Here it's all local drug trafficking, meaning it's all small points, so to speak. Some small resellers buy and resell. But the main flow, of course, goes more through broader channels, including submarines and airplanes.
Most of the drug trafficking is concentrated in the favelas, because the favelas are located here, in the mountains, there. Police arrival. They don't always stop by. If they come, it's in armored vehicles.
So they conduct a raid and that's it, they leave.
Well, yes, and even then it's very rare. They have their own strict system there. And in the end, it's all interconnected. That is, it's also present in the police. There's a lot of corruption, and all of this, so to speak, is tied to sales. A large turnover of money comes from drug sales. Accordingly, no one, so to speak, will just let go of this niche. And I'm sure that this entire connection is already present in the government as well. The money reaches there. Yes, because it's all interconnected, of course, in the end, no matter what anyone says. Brazil is a very corrupt country.
If guys from the FVL often earn through robberies and dealing substances, then sometimes girls are left with only the option to sell their bodies.
Girls sell you, so to speak. Seriously? Right here at this central level? Yes, here, you know, if you walk by, most likely, if you go a bit further, they'll always give you some kind of business card. There's, let's say, a low level, where it's about 30 reals for 20-30 minutes. There's also a VIP level.
30 reals, the price, terrible.
Yes, it's terrible. Can you imagine? And there's a line, and when you finish, there will still be a line for you. Not that I know where this is from.
My friend told me, I see. So, is it the capital of sex tourism or not?
Well, not exactly the capital, but it's popular. It will always benefit from popularity, so...
Are these local users? Or yes, locals?
Or do Americans fly in? No, there's a separate level for foreigners. There are VIP bars for 40 reals. Yes, there it goes in dollars, and accordingly, the level is indeed different. But here in the city center, all of this is available too.
In Brazil, there is a tolerant view on LGBT, passing by a government structure that deals with the rights of sexual minorities.
Well, I don't know, maybe they conduct some rituals, initiations. If you publicly express your opinion that you are against, for example, LGBT, that you don't like it, or even want to insult someone about it, then it's quite possible to face a legal process.
So it's a direct government structure? They have a whole ministry, LGBT, so to speak?
Well, I don't know if it reached ministry level, but...
Well, the building is ministerial.
Well, yes, but it's interesting, yes, how everything is officially conducted there. I haven't looked into their structure, but there's something there.
A friend told me. According to Sasha, there is a lot of juvenile crime in Brazil. It's all because they can't punish children in any way.
Well, they take them to the station, try to contact the parents, have a talk, and of course, no one lets them go.
If the parents themselves don't have hope.
If the parents themselves didn't send them. The boys, small, 12, 15 years old, run in groups, surround, distract a person, rummage through pockets, and run away immediately. They run off. So let's say they snatch a backpack and run away.
In the favela, there are 3 schools right away. The state tries to distract children from drugs with football and music. From a young age, girls dance with their mothers. Adult dances. And here we found a drummer's practice in the favela. There are always many children on the streets of the favelas. They grow up differently in poverty, but because of this, they are even more cheerful than us. But in the end, many teenagers end up in criminal gangs.
Once, I looked up the average life expectancy in Rio de Janeiro and in Brazil in general, and it showed me 32 years. At first I thought, damn, how is that possible? Everyone, really everyone has either their own relatives or acquaintances or friends who always has a familiar grandmother who has already passed the century mark. Everyone does, even I do. I'm not Brazilian, but even I have a familiar grandmother who is over 100 years old. And not just one. I think, how is it possible? 32 years? And then I realized that this is a general statistic that includes just that. These are the guys who die from overdoses, but overdoses are rare. Most often it's precisely brawls, shootouts.
Alia often hears stories about pedophilia in the favelas.
For example, a family moves into a small room, right? They have their... Well, here we are now on the roof of the house. Yes. So this is the whole house. There's a living room, a bedroom, a kitchen, and everything else.
We are 4x4 here.
Well, imagine, in a space like this, you have your family, your children are growing up. So basically, the space for sleeping is shared by everyone. And people attend to their physiological needs right in front of the children. That is, for some time they believe that the child is small and doesn't understand anything yet. But children actually understand a lot more than we even suspect. But for them, this is normal. And when they start growing up, if an adult man approaches them and suggests playing, they don't perceive it as aggression in any way whatsoever, or something wrong at all, because it happens at home, so it's normal. So it's not scary, so there's nothing wrong with it.
Parents in favelas often don't have time to look after their children, and they get into trouble.
I often talked with the girls just to chat or simply listen to their conversations. But the scariest thing was, of course, hearing their conversations while you're sitting there, sipping your beer, and you hear these horrors, like a father, a policeman, raped his daughter from the age of 8. Eventually, when she was 14, she shot him in the leg. Finally, she had enough emotional and psychological strength to take some action. She reached for the gun and shot him in the thigh. After that, he stopped bothering her.
And in this favela, do you think many people have weapons at home?
A lot of people do. And not just at home.
From Rio, I'm heading to Sao Paulo, the largest city in South America and one of the most dangerous. This city currently lacks approximately 800,000 housing units, so about 3 million inhabitants live in favelas, of which there are around 2,000 in total in the city, occupying more than 30 square kilometers. The center of Sao Paulo is also not the most pleasant area, but it's not a favela. To get to the favela, I'm taking a train to the outskirts. In any part of the city, you can easily lose your belongings, so people wear their backpacks in front. Almost everyone does this, but not all. Here, the girl has her backpack in front, while the big guys have theirs on their backs. Apparently, they have more faith in their strength. Through the scratched window of the train, the slums are visible, which means I'm almost there. But for now, I've only reached a dirty area of the metro station with a market and homeless people. Wealthy people don't even pass through such areas in transit. It's safer to fly over them in a helicopter. I'm approaching the favela by bus. The area is fenced and very rarely the chaotic structures are painted. Mostly it's bare brick. Peter now lives in a nicer neighborhood, but he spent a lot of time in the favelas and knows how everything works here. It's thanks to his connections that I can film in this area without any worries.
Everyone is indeed looking at us. Yes, probably such filming is rare here. Well, of course, Ivan, now these cops are definitely driving with this money, you see.
In the favela, shop owners trust only such couriers with their money. Carrying cash in your pocket is very dangerous.
How safe is it to walk around here like this if we don't know anyone and just came to start filming?
I don't think it's dangerous here. If they ask any questions, then they'll just be curious about who you are, who you belong to. Like in the normal 90s on the streets of the Soviet Union.
The shelves of the local shop reminded me of the 90s. Despite the low standard of living in the favela, Peter rarely encounters rudeness here. Quite the opposite.
There he is. Oh yes, now. Igor. What did he say? What did he say? He says, like, sorry, I have vodka here, and like, he took it and moved it out of our way because he was afraid we might knock over his bottle of vodka. And then he even wished us a good night. well, a very nice, pleasant person.
In the slum, we encounter not only vagrants and drunks, mothers with children, and even beautiful girls walk freely here.
Well, overall, I expected to see, drug addicts everywhere, sleeping, that sort of thing. But it's not quite middle class. In fact, it's somewhat like in our poorer neighborhoods, actually. Basically, people have cars, their houses are not made of cardboard.
Those who are, yes, by richer, for example, they try to align everything with the European style, creating beauty in their homes.
Here, apparently, they are Volkswagen fans. There's a Volkswagen on top.
One below and one in the garage.
And here they are ready, but they kind of tune them.
Some houses here even look wealthy. And it's not necessarily that they are built with illegal money.
Well, yes, mostly everyone tries to use the first floors for some kind of business, even though it's for pennies, but they kind of think that even if it's 200 reals a week, 300 or even 400 or even 500 of additional income, it's already good.
One of the recognizable features of the favelas is these steep staircases.
Well, yes, like in the movies. Here, Ketina Ferona, here, Ketina Ferona, Ferona. They run along them and hide here if anything happens.
If there's a raid, very quickly and quietly up the stairs.
The cops are already standing at the top.
We happen to come across a raid.
They blocked the road and they are already waiting for someone. So somewhere down below it's also blocked and the cops are working on this street.
In general, the police only come here in extreme cases.
They don't venture here. In this area, unfortunately, they could be killed simply because they are the police, as they are indeed the law enforcement officers. So the police are not liked here because here it's like the poor population that survives, and unfortunately, in order to survive accordingly, they might, in some cases, sell drugs and use them as well.
What is the key difference between a regular poor neighborhood and favelas? Is it precisely this chaotic construction or what?
Yes, because when all these lands here were, you see, initially settled, they were without documents, so it was only later. They slowly started to formalize everything. And before that, there was self-settlement here.
So initially it was settled just chaotically. Did people seize the land or what? Yes, they just seized it.
In the slums, people live for generations. From grandfathers to grandchildren, it's just an ordinary neighborhood. They haven't even seen others.
They have children, like, I don't know, like cats do. So for them, having a child is how responsible? Yes, I'm pregnant, okay, I'll give birth. How many do I have? 6. There will be a 7th, no problem. Risa, enough for all.
This is the house of Peter's friends. He stayed here briefly and even considered renting a room here long term. On the first floor, there's a small bar, and on the second and third floors, the owners live and rent out rooms.
The first floor is mainly used for business purposes, and we enter the kitchen area. Lifestyle. For Brazilians, their overall cleanliness here, of course, isn't great. They sell eggs lying on the street, on the ground. To be continued, and I remember very clearly, I planned to rent this little house back then, a long time ago. Count for 400 rays. It's a room where the owner sleeps. A small cabinet, with access to the balcony. There's a TV, once more again.
Brazilians don't always have tidy homes, and rooms are often rented out with just bare walls.
Here, of course, it's a complete mess. But this room is mostly already rented out, so this is another room. In fact, where I was offered to spend the night, you can also rent here. Right now it's empty. And here is the bathroom with showers. There are no bathtubs here, only showers with electric. And a laundry room and a window to the neighbors. Well, and to the house spirits. Also a window.
In slums, there are usually no washing machines, and people wash by hand in such special sinks.
3rd floor. Basically a little gate. It opens. And as you can see, we absolutely go up. Nothing has been done here yet. But it will also be equipped with several rooms. So in this way, they gradually, over time, gradually develop, broaden and expand like this. Here a little house, there to a minimum, so-called. This is already behind a closed fence. KI houses and a huge number of wires. Building, then a mountain, and already it's not possible to build more.
Ecology is the last thing that concerns the residents of the favelas, and the sewage here often flows right down the street into the nearest stream. Where the sewage is laid, there are such holes that during rain suck in rats.
That is, in essence, their sewage goes into the storm system together and goes straight into the river directly, so they don't have any.
There's clearly no filtration.
Not here.
Expensive.
Yes.
We don't have it in Moldova.
Proper facilities are only present in decent areas. There's nothing like that here.
Yes. Here from all the streets, 1, 2, 3, 4. And over there 5, 6 from all the streets to here. This seems to be the lowest point.
It all goes into the river.
All soapy and kind of blackish.
Not the freshest.
That's how I ended up in the sewer. In short, it's better to watch your step. But in such rivers you might find anything floating by.
Except crocodiles.
Except anything alive.
You won't find anything alive here.
Along the rivers in this area, homeless people live in tents. These are the ones who can't even afford housing in the favelas. In general, the rivers in the slums wash away everything, even traces of crimes.
In the city, I watch the river effortlessly and steadily rise during a downpour and the surrounding areas. And when the first streams started, naturally all sorts of trash went with that first stream, which it collected from the streets like plastic bottles and other waste. There's such rubbish in the box. And then when the water rose about a meter, more interesting things started to float, like doors, some house structures there on the roads. Cabinets were floating, then balls started floating, all sorts of children's toys, balls, everything that apparently was washed from the yards into the sewers. Then, among all this trash appeared the first corpse, something like a rat that had drowned, then a calf, then a second calf, and these were calves, small cows, and both already had bloated bellies. And among all these toys, I also spotted a real child with black skin and apparently just a newborn, because he was very small and it was clear that he had just been born. But his belly was already bloated too.
What does that mean?
It means that he has been in the water for a long time. Although here the sewage system is such that if a child is simply pulled by the water on the street, he can easily end up in the sewage, and that's it. That is, the sewage has holes so large that a child's head can pass through easily.
Here, you can't understand what's worse, that a wanted child was accidentally swept away, or that an unwanted one was disposed of like this?
Well, I think that most likely this one was disposed of. That is, because if he had been in any kind of clothing, then it would suggest that he was somehow washed away with a stroller somewhere. But like this, it's most likely an abandoned child.
Osasco is an old settlement, and Brazilians have lived here for many generations. Those who grew up here and left often return here fondly, like visiting their beloved grandmother in the village, and try to help those who stayed.
Slowly, brick by brick, they built these favelas for themselves. And accordingly, that's how they developed. And it's been like this for generations, 200 years, 300 years. And how long have they existed here?
They already have such a historical texture, and theoretically you can rent a place here in this charming and historic area, which is known for its unique character. For example, I arrived and I have little money for a normal condominium.
right here. If I want to rent, right in front of you, Aluga, Aluga, Aluga. If it's written everywhere that it's for rent, all of this is for rent, and there it's for rent. So there's a lot available for rent. And the phone numbers are written here too, so you just approach, dial and ask. And what are the prices here approximately? Well, in such houses, 600, 800 reals per month. Is this considered a good house? It is considered good, but they mostly have washing machines that are shared. There are several rooms for rent, but there's one washing machine shared among several tenants.
The rental prices, because in principle for buying property, you won't have documents. That is, you don't have ownership rights as such. You pay the old lady and live there. Yes, on a word of honor, so to speak. If it's close to the central street, then it's always much more expensive. It will be because you come back from work and you just immediately go home. Just imagine, you're coming home, you're all worn out from work, you have groceries, some potatoes, carrots, bags in your hands, and you still have to go up those stairs.
They build houses in the slums without plans and approvals. And from whatever materials, well, there's just a building. Look, just on some sticks, some kind of supports and legs. I don't know how it doesn't collapse on them periodically. There's no sign of engineering here.
That's the first thing I noticed when I came here. The thing is, with our moves and travels, we're always at some points moved. There were earthquakes everywhere. And for me, wherever I arrive, my first question is, does it shake here? Are there earthquakes here? When they told me that there are no earthquakes in Irina, I said, well, okay, let's go. And we arrive here, and automatically I still look at these structures in 3 beams, there's a huge domino standing. I think, my God, here 2 points. You don't even need that. Everything will collapse. But no, not here, not here.
For those born here, it's hard to escape the favelas.
People mainly get out of the favelas, break through, so to speak, to another level of life. Only through football, or it's music.
Well, in general, it's rare.
All the footballers, famous Brazilians, they practically all came from such areas.
How is it with them? Either football or drugs?
Yes.
Alia has indeed been in Brazil for 20 years, and it used to be even tougher here.
When they were shooting left and right, driving along Copacabana, right from a machine gun. They were shooting in bursts at police stations like that. So it was really quite scary.
And has anything changed now? Has it become quieter or what?
Now the quality of the bandits has changed. If before I wasn't scared, that is, if I didn't take anything valuable with me and someone approached to rob me, I always taught my tourists this way. You simply don't take anything with you. And if someone approaches, you turn out your pockets, show that you have nothing else, and that's it, calmly move on. Now, with the introduction of police into some favelas in the southern zone, it has become problematic for them to simply get out onto the asphalt, as they say here, yes, onto the central street somewhere, to Copacabana, to Ipanema, to rob, because they still need to get there with that gun. And when he finally decides to rob you, and you have a cracked phone, he is frustrated. Yes, exactly. And he's just furious. They shoot themselves.
From your experience? Well, some acquaintances, there are victims.
What do you want me to tell you about? About a shot knee, a knife in the back, or a cut off ear? You have a whole menu, I understand. A woman who was thoroughly stabbed in the back. She was one of those in the category that, I never take off this chain. When you say, you are very beautiful, you have very expensive, beautiful things, why don't you leave them in the room and... For these 2 days, wear costume jewelry if you can't do without beads and earrings. But in the end, you can't convince our women, especially in the 5-star hotel, how can I walk around in costume jewelry? And there she goes, all decked out in Dolce & Gabbana. A guy approaches her and says, listen, she's so cool and rich, let's share. She told him off. He got offended, insulted, and he just went at him with a knife. This is really true. It's true.
With a Russian woman?
Yes. She didn't die, no, everything's fine, she survived.
Sometimes tourists out of foolishness end up in trouble when they visit the favelas.
This mostly happens to idiots, I say it like it is, who are like looking for trouble.
That sounded offensive. In my case, I spent 3 days in 2 tough favelas.
But you're not lying in a black bag right now, are you? So you're not that much of an idiot.
Thank you. Ha 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 ha! If the video is out, then I'm definitely...
Not a fool.
Despite the absence of police, the slums have their own rules, regulations, and enforcement structures.
Everywhere. In any favela, there are their own, let's say, rules. If you follow the rules of conduct, no one will bother you, everything will be fine.
And if someone does bother you, can you turn to someone? Is there some kind of overseer or what?
There is definitely an overseer, yes. And under the overseer, there is also a deputy overseer.
And they really keep order to make sure everything is fine.
Yes. There is always more order in the favelas than in the city. And here, well, including the fact that if some rumors reach there to certain people, they act first and then figure out if it's true or not. And if you were punished for nothing, if it was gossip, for example, then they punish the person who spread the gossip.
And what if a tourist comes with a camera, for example? Well, you're not allowed to film, there's such a rule.
Well, usually the simplest thing is they'll just take away the phone and camera.
And won't the overseers punish for that?
No, because they are protecting themselves. They are protecting their property.
Any outsider, like me, is constantly and extremely closely monitored.
They track them via radio from point to point. That is, when an outsider enters the favela, they are already under surveillance, meaning everyone knows, and they are being tracked. Where he went, whom he met with. It's like the KGB in the Soviet Union. Nom. And the walls have ears. Here they have both ears and eyes. Here at 5 in the morning, for example, you walk, you don't see anyone at all. You think everyone is asleep. No. There are always at least a few witnesses who watch you, where you go, what you do.
The main problem of Rio is that the favelas are right in the city. There are cities, for example, in the northeast, where the favelas are outside or on the outskirts of the city. There they have shootouts among themselves, division, drug trafficking and all that.
Well, you don't go there kind of...
Yes, if you're not there, accordingly, your chances of being robbed or catching something else are much lower. A stray bullet is much less likely. And here in Rio, everything is mixed with the favelas. Here you have the city center, and 50 meters away a favela begins. There have already been cases just recently, a few days ago. An acquaintance, let's say, had his phone snatched while he was just walking on the street and was distracted. A smartphone. They drove up, quickly took it and left.
A moped?
On a moped, yes. Therefore, if you don't give such a signal to these robbers accordingly, the chances are minimal.
Once Sasha himself witnessed a shootout.
The police simply blocked the street, the cars, everyone stopped, and there were many cars, and they started moving, hiding behind the cars. So there was a shootout going on, the bandits were shooting back accordingly, and the police were advancing from one side. Moreover, they were hiding behind a car, and behind yours too. And I look in the mirror, I see a policeman with a rifle hiding, and I think, what should I do? Behind your car? And I say, well, what should I do? How should I react? Well, I slouched down in the seat. Well, the least I could do. I couldn't run out, couldn't drive away.
Back then, Sasha wasn't affected. But even filming a cool movie in the favelas is something people are afraid of.
There's the most famous film, City of God, right?
Yes, yes.
And it wasn't filmed in Cidade de Deus, the actual favela. That is due to the danger. It was filmed in a completely different area where the events took place. Moreover, you can't even fly a drone over there. In the favelas, let's say, it's not welcomed because they might film the same bandits and they just shoot them down.
A particular increase of criminals on Brazilian streets happens during the festive holidays when convicts are simply released to go home.
The thing is, Christmas is a homey family holiday. And therefore, every criminal has the right to spend Christmas with their family. And he puts on an ankle bracelet, meaning he's released to go home. This is called the Great Exodus. The prison gates open, and just like that, like a crowd from a factory, the criminals go, meaning they are met by wives, children, mistresses. So they go home, but of course, who among them returns to prison? Well, if 10% return, that's good.
The state understands we release everyone for Christmas and 10% return. A year later, they're like, well, it's Christmas, let's release everyone again.
Yes, the prisons are all overcrowded. For example, in a cell meant for 10 people, they cram in 30 people.
So they didn't return and we need them.
Yes, yes.
The number of robberies indeed spikes significantly at Christmas.
I understand them because they need gifts. There are many relatives, children, a whole bunch, everyone needs gifts. Where will he get the money? Of course, they have to go and rob. So for example, in my neighborhood, they open a chain store. It sells everything from household appliances to sweets, all sorts of things. And basically, since it opened, I don't even know how many dozens of times it has been robbed. They even wanted to close it permanently. It got to the point where it was robbed 3 times in a week. And people come in, they're not afraid of anything. They just walk right in. A woman walked in, took a TV and left. But it was attached, it slipped out of her hands and broke. She was like, unlucky, I'll go get another one. She goes, takes another TV and just walks out. And all this happens in front of everyone. It's all caught on camera. And no one does anything because they know it's cheaper to just let her take the TV. I got a job at a jewelry store. We work there with people of different nationalities. In general, were you robbed? No, well, various things happened. We weren't robbed because we had armed security there. Everything was as it should be. But here, like in Westerns, banks and jewelry stores are still easily robbed.
In the slums, both ordinary people and children live, so there are also treats here, and they're cheap.
This is a berry that, as I say, lives in the Amazon. These brooms are picked, processed in special drums, and the peel is removed. There, they immediately sprinkle everything with sugar for preservation, freeze it in briquettes, and then distribute it throughout Brazil.
Rice, feijão, rice with beans. This is their main food. And they eat it and it doesn't even bother them. Their delicacy is spaghetti.
So pasta is for special occasions. Here they just have some kind of industrial enterprise. That's why it's behind barbed wire, right?
And they also put private houses behind barbed wire. That means schools too. They can also be behind barbed wire.
In the favelas, teenage gangs don't often steal, but go on tours to other areas. The most tempting period for them is the carnival.
Then how does their scheme work there? Well, they work in the crowd, in groups of 10 people, and naturally they surround the victim, and immediately a phone is snatched and passed through the group. Practically the one who snatched it doesn't hold it for long. The phone is quickly passed down the line to one person, and one person collects these phones.
Probably the cleanest and most decent one.
It's a girl, someone, and she's covered her whole body. With these phones she can at once carry 20 phones on her.
Peter, despite his vigilance, unfortunately became a victim of such a theft and lost his phone.
And you tried to get it back somehow. Well, of course, I tried right there on the spot, immediately after the theft, but it didn't work out.
They can swindle a foreigner out of money in a more elegant way. For example, a waiter might steal a bank card.
Card swapping. You give your card. If you're not paying attention, they hand you a different card. You take it. And they've already used yours, seeing the PIN code, and they have your card in their hands. They just quickly and without hesitation start using it. They conveniently withdraw the money at their own terminals and securely, emptying the card, but this can be very easily and effectively tracked.
But such schemes are very dangerous for the thieves themselves.
Their laws for Brazilians are very harsh. That is, for such things, the people end up in prison for long terms. Many get caught, and the prisons are overcrowded and overfilled. In a cell meant for 12 people, there can often be 50, 40 or even 60 people crammed with far more than its intended capacity.
Why doesn't it work then? They are not afraid anyway.
They are not afraid. And for them, the situation is such that when they are all together, collectively, they do not suffer. They live together like that. In the favelas, collectively, together and strong. In essence, their situation doesn't change much in prison. Their life doesn't change significantly, so many are not afraid of ending up in prison. Only there they also feed you, and there you get fed, clothed, and you can even earn money. By the way, just to clarify, there is work there and people work and get paid. It's not really frightening.
Peter knows a lot about Brazilian prisons for a reason. A few years ago, he came here to deal with diamonds and unfortunately got into trouble.
Here they produce diamonds. In Brazil, this is the only place where synthetic diamonds are produced, and they are stronger than natural ones. And their shine is better. So I was actively and very carefully looking here for those who manufacture these diamonds to later make jewelry from them. And we used to sell these diamonds through Dubai, there in Israel, exchanges.
As it turned out, before the transport, Peter's partners packed something other than diamonds.
And here, I found these people through old connections. I came to pick up these diamonds, they packed them for me. I just went to take them out. And so, when at the airport the scanner detected something different, instead of diamonds, it turned out to be something else.
Seriously?
Well, yes. And what happened to me? They found 8 kilograms of packed cocaine in the suitcase. And that's a very large amount for the local mafia. It's also considered a very serious crime from the perspective of the state. So indeed, it's certainly a very severe form of crime. 8 kilograms.
You came, how many kilograms of diamonds were you supposed to take?
They were supposed to pack 1,000 carats for me. That's equivalent to 1 kilogram.
Wait, 1 kilogram of diamonds, how did it become 8 kilograms?
I thought they packed it in coffee because the packages were like a pack. Coffee-like, well compressed, as if the air was almost completely sucked out, and it was a very compact and dense package. With cocaine, the rules are different. It's strict, it's a hard type of drug, and the fact that you were deceived no one. It's not interesting here. But they are well aware of this. They understand that everyone is being deceived. Of course, people who transport cocaine by plane are typically called couriers, often referred to as mules, and there are certain leniencies for them in the legal system here. And they are mostly given incentives. That is, people who find themselves in such conditions usually stay here for a year. They are given long sentences, but at the same time they are released onto the streets after a year. During this time you are not allowed to leave. You were given at any point. It's approximately 8-10 years you must, in duration. Spend the entire term in Brazil.
Is that your situation?
Yes, now.
Peter was given more than usual, usually in such a situation.
The prosecutor added to my sentence, justifying it by saying that I have many stamps in my passport and that I have been in many countries for a short time.
As if you worked everywhere using the same scheme. Yes.
I explained to him that I have a business. I have my own party in the country. I am quite a well-known person in my country, but no one paid attention to this, neither the prosecutor nor the judge. They were completely not interested, and my task was to check the box, to note that another person was imprisoned for this crime. And naturally, they accused me later of being the organizer of a large European drug trafficking organization, that I am the leader, like Al Pacino, you know, Italian style. And at the same time, no one verified this information, they just believed the prosecutor's words. That's it, meaning he wanted to think that way, and based on his thinking, this happened. In short, they imprisoned me here. I ended up in these terrible conditions, in terrible places, and saw them from the inside. I went through the process with Brazilians, and then I was transferred to an international facility where the conditions were more lenient. So I experienced all of this firsthand and saw what it really is like. From the inside, these American prisons, what they are like.
And what perhaps, for example, was shocking?
Oh, the shocking part was at the beginning. It was all this filth and confusion. I didn't know the language, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what was happening to me. The only thing I understood was that they were going to pack me up, and it was unclear whether they would inform my relatives.
In a Brazilian prison, a foreigner is utterly helpless.
You end up in prison and everything is completely tied up for you. You absolutely don't have a phone. You don't even have a simple pen to write a letter. No address, absolutely nothing at all, and no one gives it to you. So you need to search through friends, communicate, and find some people who sell you information for more food. In prison, money is food and cigarettes. So you starve, and with the food they give you, you pay to send an SMS to your wife at this number. So everything is paid and very expensive.
At first, to pay for sending a simple message to his family, Peter saved on food.
So my first letters, they didn't reach at all. So what I asked for was to notify on Facebook on my page with an announcement, what I wrote by hand. No, it doesn't help. I made many letters, such announcements. Not a single one was there. Unbelievable. When I got out, I didn't see a single one from the page.
At some point, he managed to inform his family about his plight through the consulate. And did you have contact with your family or not? They were informed and that's it, the connection was cut off.
Well, then I tried, I wrote letters to the consulate and they forwarded them via email to my invoker. Did the response come back as well? Yes. Well, it was very long, prolonged, and if you send it through regular mail, it takes about 3 months. The letter is on its way.
The scariest thing is that the justice system in Brazil is unpredictable, and the defendant doesn't even know how long they might be sentenced to prison.
I was supposed to be released, so I had the documents in hand that I was getting out, and that's it. Then a new notification comes that they've added many more years to your sentence. They added to my sentence being in prison for more than 4 years for sure. And my first decision was to escape. I actually had the opportunity, I already saw the plan.
Escape from prison?
Yes, I escaped. And successfully. But since I hadn't eaten properly for a whole year, and when I escaped my legs gave out. Or maybe it was the adrenaline or something else. I just collapsed in the field. They just came, picked me up, took me back to prison.
Did they add more time?
They have a penalty of 1 year, but this penalty didn't take effect because I quickly started writing letters to the higher court. And one defender heard my appeals, checked the information, apparently, and immediately made a decision to release me. I escaped in January, and by August they had already prepared the release documents. But again, bureaucracy. By the time these documents reached the prison, I was already released in April. At the same time, I had a lawyer on the street who was not at all engaged. The lawyer took the money but did absolutely nothing.
Even despite his sentence, Peter was able to quickly handle all the legal documents.
There's corruption here, and even being here, you could say, in a kind of street mode. I'm still sort of a convict, but I've already made myself a resident. And kind of, but on a different passport. To them, I'm a different person on a different passport, a different Ukrainian passport, yes. So I already made this document with a biometric passport, but the other one is a regular passport. Ukrainian, they took it and they don't give it back. They think that this way you're tied to them. Yes, I won't run away from this country. And now I'm already a resident of the country, and you can leave. I've already left. So I've already left and returned.
It's interesting that residents of the even less economically developed African countries see Brazilian prisons as a way to improve their lives and obtain documents.
These guys who are black, they come here. And for them, it's almost like a blessing to be caught here. They get imprisoned, fed, clothed, and then released onto the streets. If they have a community here, it still works for the black people. And those who are decent black people, they even help each other, and thus they get a residency here. It's the same way as the guys going to America. They reach the borders, crossing from Mexico to the USA. They get arrested and put in jail. They stay for 3 months, at most 6 months. But when they are released from prison, they come out in the United States of America. They already become Americans. And they start processing documents, legalizing their life already in America. but they are already inside there. They are already American citizens. But he has spent time in detention. He is already considered a citizen of the state, and it is easier for him to process documents than to come to this country with a child, give birth to a child and start processing documents. It's easier to end up in jail and quickly get legalized.
During his time serving his sentence, Peter often encountered Africans.
In prison, approximately 80% of those incarcerated were black people.
In this international one? Yes.
And it's absolutely terrible. Because many really just recently came down from the tall trees. Indeed, quite literally, in fact. What are they doing there? Firstly, you had to deal with some of them like with children. That is, make them wash, brush their teeth, show them how to use basic hygiene products, because they didn't know about them, hadn't even seen them. For them, taking a shower means standing in the rain. There it's like, and here it's a real shower.
So they ended up in prison like in some kind of civilization. In a dirty prison.
Yes. So for them, this is civilization. Yes. For them, this is life. Many of them don't even want to leave. They say, oh, it's so nice here that I'll go out, steal something, and they'll bring me back here.
That's how you get crime on streets.
For them, it's a thrill. Yes, they can just come up to you bluntly and say, give me everything you have in your pocket, because they're not afraid to go back.
If Africans are now increasingly trying to desperately get to Brazil even through prison, it wasn't like that before. A huge number of black slaves were brought here from Africa, and there are still many traces of that period in the country. It seems like in some respects or ways some kind of exploitation of people.
That's right, a slave regime. The Portuguese tried to enslave the local indigenous peoples, the Indian tribes, and it was very difficult. It was difficult because the Indians were locals, they knew where to run, how to fight, how to ensure that the maximum number of Portuguese died, trying to catch them. And naturally, the Indians had something to fight for, their freedom, their tribes, their families, their religion. And so by the 60s, the Portuguese began bringing slaves from Africa. And naturally, if we talk about a certain sample, it was mostly men. But of course, there were also women. Mostly these were children approximately from 7 years old and young people up to 22 years old or so. Mainly these were people from various different tribes that were at war with each other in different regions in Africa. That is, they were enemies and could not unite into a powerful force to resist the slave traders or slave owners, to somehow oppose them. So very often the ships carried people who were enemies in Africa and ended up captured during military conflicts between tribes. And these captives were sold to the Portuguese, Spanish, English, and others. These slaves arrived at ports, particularly the port of Rio de Janeiro, and were sold to slave owners and slave traders.
The slave system here lasted for approximately 300 years.
We still have regimes, slavery, hiring of people. That is to say, these are kind of modern forms of slavery.
One of the most unpleasant jobs for women was to carry out waste. To this day, there are still ditches on the streets of Rio where sewage used to flow.
They carried it in buckets. It was all poured out here, and it flowed through the city center, either into the bay or into some river, depending on where we were. Then water supply and sewage systems were made, but kind of. 16th, 17th, 18th century, these streams, were sewage streams through the entire city center.
On this door, the professions of slaves are depicted, including waste carriers and other roles.
Since she carried buckets on her head, naturally something could drip from the bucket onto her body, her hands, and so on. And we are talking about Brazil, where the sun is very bright and scorching. And this sun would burn white spots onto the skin. And naturally, such slaves could be seen from afar. Everyone knew what they were doing. And they had something like a nickname. Among the local population, they were called leopard slaves. Because of the dark skin and these white spots like marks on the skin, it was clear what the slave was doing.
There is also a slave saleswoman here and plantation workers. If in the city people had 1 or 2 slaves, then on a plantation they could keep 500 people in slavery at once. It might seem that it was easy for urban slaves to escape, but not quite. If they ran away, it would be into the jungle, and surviving there was not easy. Moreover, in the city there was a chance to save money and buy their freedom, and across the country there were special services that caught runaway slaves. Some slaves remained in illegal slavery even after its abolition because they simply could not read. And they received any information and news from their owner who might not tell them about their new rights. With the abolition of slavery, domestic workers came into Brazilian homes. And now they are mostly black women who work for little money. This is Nikki. She lives in Brazil with her family, and she also has a helper with whom there have been awkward moments.
For example, at first she never sat with us to eat at the table. That is, they haven't had a slave system for a long time. She is a free woman with absolutely equal rights, like us immigrants who, to be honest, have very limited rights in the country. But culturally, she didn't even have the thought of sitting with us to eat at the same table. She always ate separately, cooked for herself separately, until we started constantly inviting her to join us at the table. Sit with us, sit with us. Do you want some wine? Do you want this? Do you want that?
Nikki noticed that, indeed, people with different skin colors are treated differently here.
Many people, even somewhere there in the authorities, well, it seems that where a person has more power than you, who is addressing them for solutions to some issues, they will address you as señor, señora. That is to say, this respect permanent towards you as a white master is maintained here. It's true. You know, here's the secret if you want to solve any of your issues, but the solution to your issue depends on a black person. You come to them and start begging. Like, please help me, can you help me? And you think that, should I do this? And could you, the approach should be, not you must do this for me, I need a solution to this issue. But could you help me? Show that you are dependent on them. Helping a white gentleman is very significant for all of them. It's like achieving something, like acquiring the English language.
To this day, Brazilian apartments have preserved special rooms for servants, separate toilets, and bedrooms.
It was a shock for me when we looked at many old apartments. We would enter, there's the kitchen, small, you couldn't even move around. I said, why do you make such kitchens? What's the interest in that?
Because the owners didn't stay there?
Exactly. These owners never cooked in these kitchens. That is, they were a given. These kitchens were made so small in the houses by design because it was assumed that only the staff would be there. The most important unconditional thing about her is her attitude towards children. She loves them very much. Sometimes I think she loves them more than I do.
Aren't you jealous?
No. The most important thing for me is the happiness of my children. If I can't make them happy at some point in time, then let her do it. Because children definitely deserve to feel love always, permanently. And if I sometimes don't have the resources for them, then let the nanny provide that resource. How much does such a service cost? Well, considering she works for us almost 40 hours a week, why? It comes to less than $500 a month, $400. And that's even though we overpay her. Kind of generously. You could pay less.
Due to differences in mentality, Nika often has misunderstandings with the housekeeper.
Well, I tell her that the children's areas must always be impeccably clean. Well, they are children after all.
Well, the word impeccably is understood differently by everyone.
For Brazilians, impeccably has a completely different gradation. Or, for example, a great example. She once took a walk with the child in the park. It was damp, it had rained, and it was overcast. She was sitting on a bench, and our daughter was sitting barefoot in a puddle, drawing with a stick. And it's not because she doesn't care about the child's health, but because they have this permissiveness and all-encompassing love for the child, which allows the child to develop as they wish. She genuinely didn't understand what the problem was. She's drawing, she's happy, she likes it.
Nika's worker lives right in the favela.
She travels to us for about 2 hours every day. She comes every day, she helps us around the house, she takes care of the children, she takes them to clubs and activities. She helps with all sorts of appointments, consultations, doctors, translations, and so on. She has been working with us for almost a year. She's good. She lives where the most dangerous cities. Places where tourists should never go, but she lives there permanently. Why? Because her housing costs 20 times less than ours.
Well, okay, about $450. I heard in the favelas.
Yes. and the rent is 500 reais, which is $100. They live with her husband. This includes minha cortes, internet, bills, utilities.
Many favela residents travel daily to work in wealthy areas, and returning home in the evening, they continue to live by the laws of the slums.
So even here in this place, despite the fact that unfortunate incidents happen, but nothing human is alien here. Everything is done humanely.
Yes, there are internal rules here, and stealing is not allowed.
Stealing is banned.
Stealing is prohibited. If someone here beats a woman, almost the entire neighborhood gathers and, as they say, punishes the person who does it. So they have self-discipline and self-elimination here. That is, if they killed someone here, they just took and buried that person together. And no one called the police. And generally, this information doesn't spread further. What's the point of reporting it to the police? The one who killed would be imprisoned. And if he's imprisoned, that's already one less person who brings profit to the nearby cafe, drinking beer every day. So the owner won't make this report. The people who were nearby, they all have a history. Accordingly, the police can involve them in this story. They understand that it's better to avoid getting acquainted with the police because the police will be looking for... They might find a completely different person who already has a bad history. They will tell you that you didn't do something, and the police will say you did. Here, a woman runs the family. She's the main one here, and it's not just in the favelas, it's everywhere. Therefore, as they say here, any movement from the side, men against women are severely punished. In essence, the same applies to these gays. They are so protected here that a normal person is more likely to suffer from these people than these people from a normal one. That is, everything is somehow different here. Another planet, everything is upside down.
The main income of the mafia in Brazil is drug trafficking. And in prison, Peter interacted with big sharks of this illegal business.
There was one type of drug lord, a person who deals with large shipments of goods, drug trafficking, by the ton. In general, he transports. And they caught one of these and he was in prison. I talked to him. That is, he also served 4.5 years and he was acquitted. So the bribe worked, and at the highest court, the charges against him were dropped. And he was instantly, within an hour, released from prison, and he disappeared. So a person who was supposed to be in for life, as they say, got out in 4 years. I learned all these rules, how it all works, this entire trafficking network around the world. And just then, I found out about all this, because I myself have never used, and here in Brazil I don't use. That is, I've never even known the taste of it, so I haven't encountered it. I didn't know that this country is somehow connected with drug trafficking at all. And for me, drug trafficking was only Afghanistan, that's it. But here it's like a normal business, and everyone is involved in it here, from young to old, and it's normal. That is, it doesn't scare anyone here. It's like selling eggs. Here it's treated like cigarettes, like having a beer, sort of, like having a beer, yes. So, heptin is something else. You try it and you can't refuse anymore. And here it is indeed present, but not in large quantities.
According to Peter, even officials in Brazil use it.
And the same judges, the same prosecutors, they also smoke, they also use it. They can sniff it there, and at the same time imprison people for the same crime. While understanding that these people ended up here by mistake, they smoke left and right and use marijuana there. But at the same time, it is sold everywhere here, left and right. The highest price ceiling is approximately 50 reals, and the lowest ceiling is around 5 reals.
Territory of Allah. Yes, $1. And do people come here from more prosperous areas specifically to buy something illegal?
No, because in more prosperous areas there are always places where you can buy. The same thing also from trusted people, but there it's only quality stuff. In expensive areas they value their customers just as much as in poor areas. Here everyone knows each other and knows who sells, who trades. There are even cases where they grow it at home, but that of course affects the quality.
Fyodor is far from the only foreigner who was imprisoned for drug trafficking, and if he indeed managed to successfully get out, most others do not.
People come here looking for some kind of income, and immediately and in large amounts. They are loaded with drugs here and sent to the airport. At the airport they are caught by the police, put in prison, then they are released and live here already. Like homeless people.
Now, even Peter himself is trying to help such people.
They are already being explained how to survive in this situation, Vova, where it is better sort of, well, trying at first even to help with housing so that they can already contact a relative, find some money, maybe even start working in order to somehow help themselves in this life. And I try to catch such people on their way out there so they don't get lost at the train station, at the bus station. When they are released from prison, the person is released, they need to return home, but they have no money, no documents, nothing at all.
Now they are super vulnerable.
Yes, and the person even needs something as basic as food. And they have no social opportunities, no free transportation, nothing at all, absolutely nothing. They are just there, released in flip-flops onto the street in torn clothes because they have worn out somehow in prison.
And is the clothing the same for the entire term?
Well, yes. And accordingly, the person steps out onto the street already looking like a homeless person.
Already ready for the favelas.
Yes, and it's not the favelas. They won't even be allowed into the favelas here. It's under the bridges, under the bridge over there by the river, and there they might end their lives there and no one would even know about it. There was a Latvian here, he got out, they gave him 4 COVID-19 vaccinations, he just stepped out of prison, immediately caught COVID-19 and died. And that's it, no one even looked for him. Who, where, what? In other words, no one knows about it, that he died at all. Well, how do you know? Well, the guys who saw him dying, they later informed me about it. But is it really possible to die in the beginning? Yes, it is. If you get out, you have no information, they don't give you any information at all. So accordingly, if you don't even look for it, and the person who went outside has no access to the internet, nothing at all. And the way you look, you can't just approach someone and ask to use their telegram, that's unlikely. Such help is of course impossible to get.
There are social hostels in Brazil, but it's not easy to get into them, such as
you come, register, they look at you, and then decide when you can be accommodated in the hostel. So it could be immediately, or it could be in 3 days, or potentially in 2 weeks. During this time, for example, a person could actually die, just approached on the street, stabbed with a knife. So that has happened too. There are guys who were just walking down the street and got stabbed because
someone decided to take everything they had, especially from young and beautiful girls. Even more problems for girls who
have no idea what they're doing. They're told to deliver a rich package, an expensive package. They don't even inform her. She's not aware of, and the suitcase is locked. She can't even open it. To see what's inside, and that's it. It's a valuable gift. You're not supposed to see it. And all sorts of things like that. The girl gets involved. They promise her $1,000 to $3 for the trip, pay for her tickets, and she ends up in jail. And at the exit, where they end up, I don't know. The police confiscate everything, all phones, all your house keys as well.
But they can get caught, they can be tracked down and waited for.
They can...
And they end up en masse somewhere in slavery further on.
Maybe. It could be a business directly set up in the prison itself,
where they will already know when which girl will be released.
With a photo, probably. It's terrible.
The main task for those who got out of prison is to leave. But when there is no money and there is a travel ban, it's very difficult.
The last guys who were in prison when Lula became president, and they started releasing the guys then. They were detained for 2 months, that is a month or two, not for a year, just held for a month or two and then released. But I help such people to leave from here. And when you help a person to escape, to leave from here, they disappear from the system's view. If a person does not show up, does not check in, they simply write them off after 3 years. On one hand, I am violating their rules as well. The law when I help people escape from this country. Because they can accuse me of being involved in human trafficking and so on. At the same time, I already have some kind of history here, a criminal one. They can't really charge me with it, but it's very hard for them to prove. But in this country, you don't need to prove anything. They just accuse, imprison, and that's it. And then you have to prove that it didn't happen.
So there's no presumption of innocence, but a presumption of guilt. You prove that it wasn't you, and we'll see.
They imprison you first and then figure out why you were imprisoned. A woman said she was beaten. Yeah, no one checks for injuries or anything. They imprison you. And then you have to sort it out, meaning you have to prove that you didn't hit this woman and that you never even saw her.
In prison, Peter also met very dangerous criminals.
There was a Chinese gang here that was involved in theft and extortion. And if people didn't hand over the ransom money, they would kill those people. And so I talked to one Chinese guy, he said that he personally killed more than 1,000 people.
More than 1,000?
Really?
Because a reasonable person in their right mind.
Yes, they are cold, the Chinese, cold-blooded. And at the same time, it didn't matter to him whether it was a child or an adult.
Well, it's just like a job.
Cold. He treated it completely. And it was normal. The person served time for it. 4.5 years. Why? That's the law here. Since it's still the mafia, they were extorting money. And some people ended up on the street. They of course helped. So these Chinese, they lived like kings in that prison because they had outside help, financial, and plus lawyers and all that stuff. When did they deport a person, the Chinese, to their country? For crimes in Brazil, the charges are dropped and they become a free person. I asked how they operate. There are oddballs who showed off their cool car, golden child, flashed money on the internet, and they are already looking for him to steal and ask the parents for a ransom. They first see what a person is flaunting, and then they proceed from there. They do study a person before they steal.
Is the perfect time to flaunt on social media in front of the Chinese. On my Instagram, I post a lot of content from each of my trips. On Instagram, I am Vova Karmanov. Subscribe, and if you see the Chinese mafia among the other followers, let me know. Alia truly loves the favelas and even really guides tourists here, despite all the associated risks.
Any guide can take you to the Christ statue or Sugarloaf Mountain. And I wanted to show a different side. Rio de Janeiro.
To avoid problems, Alia doesn't bring just anyone here.
I need people to have a great time. And then I thought, let me have a trash tour. As tourists once called me, they said, listen, they were provoking me themselves. Tell us something extreme. Come on, something extreme, extreme, extreme. And well, there's plenty of that here, of course. Here you go, here you go. Would you like more? Sometimes, for example, when a group comes, the girls are all wildly excited, squealing, screaming, dancing, and the guys most often say, look, did you see? He's got a grenade hanging there. I say, I saw, and so what? What do you mean, so what? He's got a grenade hanging there.
Well, it's just hanging there, everything's fine. To be continued.
There are people with automatic weapons. I mean, it gets to the point where people are so relaxed with me that they don't even perceive the weapons as real.
We descend from the mountain at night. And without a bike, on foot. On the way down, I encountered people with automatic weapons 5-6 more times. I even got somewhat used to them and exchanged a couple of jokes with one of them in broken English. We travel from the favela to the center like regular residents. In a slum minibus. We had ones like these 20 years ago. Nothing special, except for the view from the window of the world-famous Copacabana beach in the ocean, which is so turbulent today that a mist has formed. I definitely doubt that Peter carefully planned his trip to Brazil and life here this way, but it seems to me that he is full of strength and optimism, and will handle all the problems.
The children aren't here? No. 4 children and all in different countries. All 4, all in different countries. Japan, the Netherlands, Ireland, and Ukraine. What I lost, I will never get back. Essentially, if you were a businessman and thought, as a businessman, you need to apply a scheme, so nothing terrible.
Returning at night from the favelas is not the most pleasant activity for a foreigner. But after spending some time here, I realized that even in the slums, mostly normal people live who love to have fun, have children, and help their neighbors. This was an episode about Brazil, not my last episode about Latin America, so subscribe to my YouTube and Instagram. Everywhere it's me, Vova Karmanov. Bye!